Hello, welcome to Faith and Freedom. I'm Garrett. I am a Christian libertarian. And some of you may know that I ran for county legislator this last round. The election was in November. I won, or I did not win. Sorry. I did not win. But I do keep track of the county legislator. I feel like I won because I got so much support, but it is what it is. So anyway, I do keep track of the county legislator, and I don't know if anyone heard of this. There was a brief article in the Post-Journal. I didn't realize it until I saw the article, and many of my friends who follow local politics were not aware. But the March meeting of the Chautauqua County Legislature was a historic event. So let me outline how a typical county legislator meeting goes, right? So they open up with any sort of announcements from the legislator, and then at the beginning they do the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer by one of the legislators, and I think that's great. And this meeting kicked off, ironically, this historic county legislator meeting kicked off with my opponent, Mr. Davis from Frewsburg, doing the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, and he gave a wonderful prayer. It was great. That was probably the best part of the meeting. From there, from the prayer, they moved to the first privilege of the floor. And that is where the public can speak, but it's a specific time to speak. You must speak regarding an item that is on the agenda. So a legislative item that's going to be voted on. So if you have something to speak on, and there were people at this meeting that spoke about the wastewater surveillance program and the money that they needed to pass this legislation to carry this out. And I think some people are validly concerned about this because it seems harmless now. It seems like get in front of disease type public health measure where they're just sampling the bulk wastewater that comes in from half of the county here, or a big chunk of the county. But within the legislation that is attached to this money, it's very vague and it's very wide, to where if someone declared, probably the governor of New York, and then down through the State Department of Health chain, declared another pandemic or public health emergency, the way it's written, they could keep working their way upstream through the wastewater system and eventually get to individual buildings, whether that's a business or a resident. So the old slippery slope, right? So valid concerns not being used like that now. And of course they say, oh, no, we're just going to keep this on the bulk. Well, yeah, this is politicians making promises. But anyway, there was some speaking to that during the first privilege of the floor, along with some other money to hire more people into the health department, but through this grant and nonprofit, but basically more potential foot soldiers for the county health department, which is in fact an arm of the state health department, according to our county charter. So there are a few people that spoke to those votes, and then, or to those resolutions, and then they had the votes, and of course the majority of legislators voted in favor of those two somewhat controversial motions. So they passed. I believe one of the dissenting legislators on the wastewater surveillance was my opponent, John Davis. So after that, after all the stuff is voted on, and they like to do this thing called blocking. And when I first started following the legislator, I didn't understand what they were doing, because there was a legislator would make a motion to block resolution 102, 103, 104, 105, and I thought, well, they're making a motion to be opposed to this, right? But that's not what it is. What they're proposing in that motion is to vote on 4, 5, 6, sometimes up to 8 or 9 resolutions all at once with one vote, yes or no. And they typically do that because the resolutions that come before them have already gone through committee, and that's where, if there's going to be any debate or discussion, it usually gets done. And I'm not a huge fan of that. I mean, I think there should be committee, but I think there should be discussion following that at the general legislator meeting, even if you're just rehashing what you said in committee, just so people kind of get an understanding. But anyway, that's what they do. And typically following all the votes, there is a second privilege of the floor. So I mentioned the first privilege of the floor, and that's specific for people to speak on legislation. But the second privilege of the floor is where members of the public or the legislators, if they want, anyone in the chamber can speak about any issue, right? And this is a chance for citizens that those legislators represent to voice concerns about something that might not be yet on their radar. There's this woman who comes up who likes to raise concerns that her and her neighbors have about the issues with the wind farm projects up in Villanova, Charlotte area. And often she has some valid concerns. Often she's off the wall. I voiced concerns during that second privilege of the floor of the encroachment of the quote unquote green energy plans we have in Chautauqua County and how that's going to handicap our farmers. It's going to clog up our agricultural lands and probably do some long-term damage in terms of the property values of that agricultural land and maybe the fertility or the tillableness of it going forward once those solar panels do finally get decommissioned and taken out of there. So instead of offering that second privilege of the floor, one of the legislators raised his hand and made a motion to adjourn. Now this is Jay Gould, and he's probably one of the oldest, longest serving legislators on the body. And he represents, I believe, like Asheville, Panama, and it's kind of a running kind of joke at the legislator meeting. They always let him do the motion to adjourn because he kind of speaks real slow and he's old, and you may wonder if maybe he'd fallen asleep for a little while during that legislative meeting, and it just kind of gives everybody a good laugh when he says, "I'd like to make a motion to adjourn." And of course, you still, on a motion to adjourn, it can't be, according to Robert's Rules of Orders, there can't be any discussion on it, but it still requires a simple majority vote to adjourn. So the second privilege of the floor was not offered, and it was a unanimous vote by the legislators to adjourn. So let me be clear on that. It was a unanimous vote. Every 18 of 19 legislators that were there to revoke that second privilege of the floor from the citizens that they represent and go home and watch the end of the basketball game or whatever they wanted to do, right? And this might not seem like a huge deal, and I'm not entirely certain that it is the first time that it's ever happened at the Chautauqua County Legislature, but it's probably the first time it's happened in a very long time. And it's not a good sign in terms of the health of our local government, the dedication of those people that swore an oath to serve and represent the people of this county. And in my opinion, it's a great disrespect to the people that they serve of this county. And in his interview with the Post-Journal article, Mr. Gould, who initially made the motion to adjourn, said that during their caucus, and maybe I need to explain that. So each party will kind of get together for a little drinks and hors d'oeuvres thing over at Webb's or whatever, wherever they want to meet in Mayville, basically get their game plan together of how they're going to vote and what they're going to do that night. He said that they discussed it in caucus, and all of our Republican majority apparently agreed. He said they all agreed in caucus. They obviously all agreed when the rubber hit the road and it came time to adjourn and skip the privilege of the floor. So remember that in 2 years when your local representatives come up to vote. And for those of you who think that, I might just be doing this to lay the groundwork to start slinging mud because I want to run and get in there again, I'm moving out of town in August. I got no skin in the Chautauqua County Legislator game anymore. I'm bringing this up to you to make you aware of what's going on up there, and hopefully someone, or a lot of someones, will get motivated to put their skin in the game and get up there and bring some more honor and integrity back to the legislative body in Chautauqua County. So just wanted to let you know that happened. Do with it what you will, and I'll see you next time on Faith and Freedom.